All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at some of these solving with trigonometric identities. Now, of course, the very first thing you have to do is you have to know your identities. But once you know those, it shouldn't be that big a deal. Let's take a look at this first problem. We have 2 sine squared theta plus 2 cosine theta. Now, here's the deal. You got to get these to be the same. Now, I can't change a cosine to be a sine, but I can change a sine squared to be a cosine squared. So 2 equals 1 minus cosine squared theta plus 2 cosine theta. And the reason for that would be Pythagorean. Okay. Now, once we have that, let's move everything to one side. And so we come up with 0 equals negative cosine squared theta plus 2 cosine theta. And that's going to be minus 1. Now, given that, let's get rid of this negative sign so we don't have to fight it. Oh, by the way, that would just be, simplify or isolate, something like that. And so you get this. From here, you just simply break it up. You say, hey, if this were a squared minus 2a plus 1, I would break it up a minus 1, a minus 1. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say cosine theta minus 1. Cosine theta minus 1. So I solve set equal to 0, set equal to 0. So that's by factor. And then we're going to say cosine theta equals positive 1 by addition. And so cosine inverse. And so where is the cosine inverse positive 1? The cosine inverse of theta is going to be positive 1 at 0 degrees. So your answer here is theta equals 0 degrees. Now, in this case, you have a multiplicity of 2 because they happen to be the same, but it doesn't matter. There's your answer. Okay, now let's go over here. Folks, come on now. How do I get rid of a 3? Let's divide. Okay, how do I get rid of a squared? Let's square root. Okay. And so now I get 2 over root 3 equals cosecant theta. At this point, how do you solve that? Well, cosecant inverse. Guys, if you can't do this by now, I really don't know what to tell you. So now cosecant has to do with sine, so that's going to be opposite. Where is the opposite? Root 3. The opposite is root 3 when theta equals 60 degrees. Now, if we were within a full 360, yes, it's going to happen over here at 60 degrees because you got root 3, 2, and 1. But it would also happen over here, even though it's not the primary value. So if that's 60 degrees, this is 120. So when I open up the answers and you see that there are multiple answers here, that's why. All right, so bam. And what was the reason on that inverse? There you go. Okay, now let's look down here. Now, this one I chose because it's a little different. If I try to subtract this over, negative sine theta plus root 3 cosine theta equals 0, that would be my first thought, but that doesn't help me. That's a no-go. Okay, what we can do is I can divide both sides by cosine theta. And I say, whoa, Mr. Moore, are you dividing by 0? Well, we're going to have to look at that here in a minute. So that's by division, and that gives us negative. Now, sine over cosine is tangent theta equals negative root 3. And what property is that? Sine over cosine turns into tangent by quotient. Okay, let's get rid of those two negatives just to make life easier. So let's get rid of the tangent by a tan inverse. And so where is the tan inverse? Root 3. So I'm looking for where is the opposite root 3, the adjacent one. The answer there, of course, is going to be 60 degrees. So by inverse, I have theta equals 60 degrees. Now, again, if I'm looking for that secondary value, it's not going to be over here because that's positive and that's negative. But it could be down here because that's negative and that's negative. So if 60 degrees is here, what's all the way around? 240. So there you go. So let's double check, though, to make sure we haven't caused a problem, because I did divide by a cosine theta. Now, cosine theta equals 0 at 90 degrees or 270. Since 90 or 270 are not the two answers that I came up with, it's okay because we did not divide by 0. So let's go over here. Now, in a similar way, take a look at what we have going on over here. Now, this is a mess. And unlike the last one where we just had two terms that we could divide, it makes it easy. I cannot divide by all this. Now, there's actually two potential ways I could go with this, because I do know that secant squared and tan squared are related, but I don't know that I want to do that because that could open me up to some different square roots and things. Let's just do the following here in just a moment. Okay, so now that I'm done talking to my mother, let's finish this one up. I think what we ought to do is we ought to go sines and cosines on this because I'm just not sure where to go with it. So let's do this. And, well, okay, that looks kind of nice because now at least I got a bunch of cosines. I could also do this. I could say, hey, cosine theta over cosine theta. And so now I have 0 equals cosine theta plus sine theta plus 1 over cosine theta. Okay, that didn't help a ton. Going to be honest, it didn't help a ton. I know what I should do. I don't want to do it, but that's okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this. I'm going to start over. I'm going to move it across the other side. So let's just do that right now. We have 1 plus secant theta plus tan theta equals 0. Okay, so let's minus 1. So I got secant theta plus tan theta equals -1. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's subtract secant theta. Minus secant theta. And so I have tan theta equals -1 minus secant theta. All right. Now, I went back with this because I told you earlier that there is a way to connect tangent and secant, but you require square. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to square it. All right. Don't like that, but that's the way it goes. So we got tan squared theta equals 1 minus, so twice the cross product, so plus 2 secant theta plus secant squared theta. All I did was I foiled, okay? All I did was foil. Now, at this point, okay, at this point, I can say, well, gee, tan squared theta plus 1 equals secant squared theta. So I can either do, this is getting bad. Tan squared theta equals 1 plus 2 secant theta minus be plus tan squared theta plus 1. Okay, so I guess we could do that by replacing secant squared theta with tan squared theta plus 1 per the formula. Now, minus tan squared theta minus tan squared theta. Gone. 0 equals 1 plus 2 secant theta plus 1. So 0 equals 2 plus 2 secant theta. -2 equals 2 secant theta. Secant theta equals -1. So where in the world does secant theta equal -1? Well, let's see here. That would be hypotenuse 1, opposite -1. No, wait a minute. Secant goes with cosine, so that's adjacent. So it's going to be 180 degrees because we would say, hey, 1 over -1. So I have hypotenuse over adjacent. So that's 1 here, -1 here, 180 degrees. Theta equals 180. Yay, there it is. Now I got to go back and I got to give all my reasons. answer here is subtract